I love making pouches, and this one is probably my favorite. Why? Because it has a clear vinyl front so you can see what you can put in there. This pouch is perfect for using leftover pieces of fabric from other projects. It's scrap friendly and it's fat quarter friendly. It's easily adaptable so you can make it to any size zipper. A full list of requirements will be in the description box below. Shall we get on with the making? Okay, let's go. You'll need 2 pieces of fabric that are 13 inches by 11 inches, a piece of batting the same measurement, vinyl that is 9 inches by 11 inches, a 5-inch piece of fabric cut into two 2.5-inch by width of fabric strips, a 14-inch dress zipper, some fusible interfacing, and a piece of fabric for the accent that is 6.5 inches by 11 inches. Other handy items that you might need apart from your general sewing tools are basting spray, a walking foot, a 1/4-inch foot that looks like this and has a guide on the side, and also pins or clips. The first thing we want to do is baste the back section of our pouch together. So place one piece of fabric wrong side facing up with your batting on top, and then the other piece of your fabric with the right side facing towards you, and then baste those 3 layers together. When you're basting, it's a good idea to start from the middle and then work your fabric towards the outer edges. Before I head to the sewing machine, I'm going to use an erasable marker to mark out some really simple quilting lines. It doesn't have to be too fancy, but this would be a good opportunity to practice your free motion quilting skills. All I'm doing today is marking a simple star pattern. I just want these 3 layers to hold together. And these marks will come right out when I iron this piece. Before you start quilting, make sure you attach your walking foot. We have our binding that we've cut into 2.5-inch strips, and we're just going to join that together. So we have our left tail that we want to place horizontally, and we have our right tail that we want to place vertically on top of our left tail, and I'm just spacing them like this because I don't want those selvages to be in my binding. So it takes a little bit of fiddling to get them in the right spot. But once they are, we want to place a pin going from the right hand side to the left hand side, because we want to sew from the left hand side to the right hand side. And you can take a marker if you wish, and you can mark the line from left to right, but I'm just going to eyeball it. And then we'll snip the tails off, leaving a 1/4 of an inch seam. So there's our mitered join. Now what we're going to do is take this over to the iron, and we'll press these seams open, and then we'll fold the binding piece in half and we'll press it together. This is what our quilt binding looks like, with the raw edge of the fabric on one side and the folded edge of the fabric on the other. Working with the accent piece now, we're just going to flip that so that it's wrong side facing up, and then we're going to take our fusible interfacing and we're going to place it with the glossy side or the sticky side down on top of the wrong side of the fabric. Then we'll fold the accent piece in half, and we're basically going to iron the interfacing into the middle of the accent piece. So just giving it a gentle press. This will give it some stabilization. So if we just open this out, we'll see that the interfacing is only fused to one side of the accent piece. Now we're going to put the binding on our accent piece. So we have our accent piece and our binding we want to place directly on top, and we have the raw edge of our binding on the raw edge of our accent piece. So we'll measure out a piece that's about 1 inch longer than the accent. So we'll overhang the binding by 1/2 inch on both sides. And we'll cut that off there. And we'll secure that on with a couple of clips. And we'll do exactly the same for the piece of vinyl. So just making sure that you have the right edge of the vinyl that you want to bind, which is the piece that is 11 inches. So along the 11-inch side, place the raw edge of the binding along the side of the vinyl that measures 11 inches and overhang by 1/2 inch each side. I'm just attaching my 1/4 inch foot so that I can attach my binding to my accent piece with a 1/4 inch seam. I'm going to take this to the ironing board and press my binding to the front. So there's a seam line that runs along here. I want to fold the binding over so that it rests just on top of that seam. And then I'm going to press it in place. Now from here you can pop some pins in or pop your clips on to hold it together, but I'm going to hold it together with a little bit of school glue. This works just like any other basting glue that's on the market. So just a little bit, you don't need a lot of it, and heat setting it with your iron will hold this in place when we get back to the sewing machine to sew that down. Next, we're going to attach our binding to our vinyl piece. Now you might find that your vinyl piece, when you go to sew it, is sticking to your needle plate. One way that you can stop that from happening is to lay down a piece of tissue paper with your vinyl piece on top, and that should prevent the vinyl from sticking to your needle plate, and your binding should go on smoothly. But let's try it. No sticking. So that was a good little experiment. I hadn't tried that before. And now we can just rip the tissue paper off. That saved a lot of headaches. We just take that over to the iron and very, very carefully press the binding to the front, just like we did with our accent piece, but be really careful not to get your iron on the vinyl because it will melt it. Now we're going to top stitch the binding down on both our vinyl piece and our accent piece. And I'm just using an 1/8 of an inch seam to do that. Next, I'm going to attach my zipper to my accent piece and my vinyl piece, but I'm going to do this one at a time, just by placing the accent piece directly on top of the zipper tape and pinning that in place. You don't want the accent piece to be too close to the zipper tape. We want it to be about an 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the zipper tape to the edge of the accent piece. So I'll start pinning that in place there. Then I'll pop the zipper foot onto my machine. we'll sew it together. I'm just going to line the edge of my binding up with the edge of my zipper foot and sew the seam. Now I'm going to attach my vinyl in exactly the same way. Before I stitch my vinyl piece to my zipper, I just want to make sure that the edge of the vinyl is lined up with the edge of the accent piece. And that's our top piece put together. Now we'll attach it to the back. Now I'm going to lay my accent piece on top of the back piece of the pouch, and I'm going to clip it in place. The reason that I'm not using pins for this section is because I don't want to pierce the vinyl and put holes in it. So just popping some clips on because we're going to baste these layers together. Before I take this to the sewing machine, I just want to make sure that my zipper is open. Now we can baste our pouch together using a 1/4 inch seam. Now we want to trim off any excess and get ready for the binding. Next, I'm going to attach the binding, and I want to put the raw edge of the binding to the raw edge of the pouch, and we're going to attach the binding from the back of the pouch. Now I want to leave a small tail about 4.5 inches. And I'm going to attach that with a 1/4 inch seam. Before I get to the bottom of the pouch, I'm going to stop a 1/4 inch from the bottom and with my needle in the down position, lift the presser foot, rotate the pouch 45 degrees, lower the presser foot and sew into the corner of the pouch. This will give us a nice mitered corner at the end. From here, I'm going to lift the binding tail up and make a crease and fold it back down on itself. And then I'm going to put it back under the needle. You can reinforce this by starting 1/4 inch from the edge and back stitching onto the edge of the pouch, and then continuing to sew all the way back down. Once we get to the next corner, we'll repeat that process of stopping 1/4 inch from the bottom edge, and with the needle in the down position, lift the presser foot, rotate the pouch 45 degrees, lower the presser foot, and then sew directly into the corner. Cut the threads, flip the binding up, make a crease, bring it back down on itself, and then continue to sew. As we come to our last side, I'm only going to sew a couple of inches down from the corner and stop. To join our two tails together, I'm going to take the left tail and place it on top of the right tail, and I'm going to measure 2 1/4 inches from the edge of the right hand tail and mark that place on the left tail. So the left hand tail comes across the right hand tail, and I've made a mark 2 1/4 inches from the edge of the right tail, and I've made that mark on the left hand tail or the top tail. Now I'm going to snip off the excess. Now with the left hand tail, you want to open that one out and flip it up, and the right hand tail you want to open out and place directly on top of the left hand tail, just like that. We'll pop a pin in from the left hand side through to the right hand side, because we're going to rotate that 45 degrees and we're going to sew from the left, top left, to the bottom right. This part can be a little bit tricky to maneuver, so just take your time and make sure that you get your tails in the right place. And before we snip that excess off, we just want to check and make sure that our binding has been joined correctly, and it has. So snip these tails off and leave yourself about 1/4 of an inch seam. Finger press that seam open, and then we'll start where we finished, and we'll join our binding to our pouch. Now we want to take this to the ironing board, and we want to press our binding to the front of our pouch. Just be super careful once again when you're ironing the binding to the front so that you don't melt the vinyl. So now I'll take this over to the sewing machine and I'll finish by stitching down the binding. So there you have it, another super cute storage pouch.